Okay, so let's dive into this. You've brought us this really interesting source about a figure from legend, Kay Khosrow.
Right. And what jumps out immediately is, well, how his story doesn't end like most legends.
Yeah, usually there's a big battle, a tragic death, or maybe they just fade into obscurity. But this king, the
hmm
source says he disappeared.
Exactly. And that act of disappearing, it's not just a plot point. It's kind of the key to understanding him, according to this text. He's presented as a sovereign who figured out real power wasn't ruling others.
But ruling yourself.
Precisely, mastering oneself.
Okay, so the big question we're exploring in this deep dive then is, why would a ruler, someone with absolute power, just walk away right at the very height of it all? And maybe more importantly, what does that tell us listening now about, real leadership or this idea of sovereignty over yourself?
Well, it helps to look at his beginnings. The source mentions he was born in exile, son of Siavash, raised away from everything, in silence almost.
Okay, so not your typical royal upbringing.
Not at all. And when he eventually comes back, the narrative insists it's not for revenge, which you might expect, or even out of fear. It's framed as this need to restore justice, to complete a kind of truth cycle.
That already feels different, not just reclaiming a throne, but maybe fulfilling something bigger.
Exactly, bigger than just the crown itself. And then when he does rule, the source makes a point of saying he didn't fall into the usual traps. Pride, arrogance, getting lost in the authority.
Which, let's be honest, seems almost inevitable with that much power. The old saying, power corrupts.
Right. But he's shown as this exception. He apparently stayed really aware of himself, his own mortality, the deeper meaning behind things.
That self-awareness, that's crucial.
It seems to be what leads him to this really quite radical decision.
This is the core of it, isn't it? At
Yeah.
the absolute peak of his power, when most rulers are thinking about expanding, building monuments, securing a legacy, Kay Khosrow steps down.
And the text stresses this wasn't because things were going badly. It wasn't failure or being overthrown.
No, it was choice.
Complete certainty is how it's put. He just knew his time and that role was over. And then comes the really mysterious part, his exit.
He gathers his close companions, says his time's up, and just walks off into the wilderness. The source mentions snow, wind.
Yes, into silence, essentially. His friends follow for a bit, but eventually have to turn back. He just keeps going. And the critical detail, nobody ever found, no grave, nothing.
Wow.
Which leads to that phrase the source uses, disappearance, not death.
Disappearance, not death. That lands differently, doesn't it? It feels active, deliberate, not just something that happened to him.
It does, and the interpretation offered is that he becomes this image, this symbol of someone who could fully experience power but never become its prisoner. Like the idea he conquered himself so completely
Right.
that conquering anything else became unnecessary.
Kind of, yeah. He didn't need external validation or control anymore.
So in a world that's all about being seen, about dominating the space, he chooses absence, vanishing, leaving behind what the source calls the strongest echo of all, because he vanished. It's really counterintuitive. There's also that quote included from Ferdowsi's Shahnameh.
Oh, right, where he talks about being weary. Let me see. I seek no crown, no throne ahead. My soul is weary of worldly delight. He wants to vanish into nature, basically, not clinging to power.
That line really captures it, I think. It's not necessarily a weariness of ruling well, but maybe of the entanglement, the worldly delight that comes with the power and the status. Maybe he saw clinging to it would diminish him somehow.
Right. Which brings us back to that main message from the material. Kay Khosrow wasn't beaten. He wasn't pushed out. He just saw that the throne, that power, wasn't the final goal. His ultimate act of kingship was letting go, release.
And that's where he becomes more than just an old story, right? He stands for something bigger, mastering your own life, achieving that true sovereignty of the self, and crucially, knowing how and when to release things.
So the connection for you, listening, is that this type of kingship isn't necessarily about ruling a country. It's about governing yourself, your impulses, your attachments.
Yeah. It leaves you with a pretty profound thought, doesn't it? What kind of inner strength, what kind of deep certainty would it actually take to do that? To look at something you've built, maybe something powerful or successful in the world's eyes, and just walk away when you know its time is done. Choosing that quiet disappearance over hanging on.